Hey, you guys, welcome to Addictive Personalities. My name is Bethany, and this podcast is based on lived experience, not professional advice. We're going to talk about addiction in all forms, mental health, trauma, healing, and everything in between. This is a space for honest conversation without judgment. So, wherever you are in your journey, I'm really glad you're here. So, today's episode is going to be focused on parenting, both how we were parented and how we parent today. So, I want to start this episode with an affirmation. And today's affirmation is I focus on progress, not perfection. And for those of you who might not be familiar with affirmations, it's not I will. It's I am. It's I do. It's something you claim for yourself right now. And even if you don't believe it yet, say it anyway. Say it out loud. Say it in the mirror. I focus on progress, not perfection. So, like I said, this episode will be focusing on parenting, and it might be triggering for some of you, and it might feel a little uncomfortable, but it's very important and it's honest. A lot of us didn't just end up here. We were shaped here by what we saw when we grew up, by what we didn't see, by what was normalized in the family, by what was ignored. And I'm not saying that to blame parents. In fact, it's actually the opposite. I am saying it because if we don't look at it, we will repeat it. It's a cycle. So this episode is really two parts: how our parents shaped us and how we are shaping our children. Let's just say it out loud. Addiction does not happen in a vacuum. It grows in environments. But sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's obvious. Chaos, substance use, instability. But the quiet part is the emotional neglect, never talking about feelings, being told to toughen up instead of being understood, maybe holding back tears, don't be a baby, put your big pants on. Watching a parent cope in ways that you don't even realize are coping mechanisms until you're older. Overworking, drinking every night, avoidance, anger, outbursts, control, gaslighting. We don't just inherit genetics, we also inherit behavior. We inherit silence. We inherit survival patterns. And then we grow up and wonder why we feel uncomfortable just sitting with ourselves. So there's also something that doesn't get talked about enough. And some of us became the parent in a family unit before we were ever ready emotionally. And I can't actually claim this for myself because I went another direction. I left the family and went and sought my own life outside of the family. I escaped, essentially. But some of you were the adult in the room. You were regulating. You were keeping the peace. You were reading everyone's mood, anticipating everyone's behavior. And that does something to your brain. You, in that case, don't learn how to feel your own feelings. The only feelings you have our anxiety or worry for everyone else because you're learning how to manage everyone else. And eventually, your own feelings become uncomfortable and you might need to escape from that. Like I said, for me, it looked different. I didn't have direction. I was, and maybe my parents being divorced when I was young, maybe that played a role. There were other things too, things I don't fully want to unpack here yet, but I was looking to belong. I felt very misunderstood, and I was the oldest, and I had 4 younger siblings, all boys. I was the youngest. I mean, I was the oldest, and I was the only girl. Um, so I didn't really know who I was, and I was looking to belong, to be seen, to be validated. And I found that in people who I thought liked me, but when I really look back, there was almost always an ulterior motive. I was young, naive, and honestly, I was a target for older people. And at the same time, I had freedom, too much freedom. I was running the streets of the Inland Empire with no one really checking where I was or what I was doing. Not because my parents didn't care, but because they didn't know how. I don't really think my mom knew the gravity of the things I was doing. And my dad was in Chicago and only getting updates from me every so often. I had a real resentment towards my father, so I wasn't really reaching out to him that often. Um, and I was really strong-willed, so I was going to do what I wanted anyway. I didn't know how to communicate. I mean, I was a kid, right? I was still a kid. I needed structure. I needed discipline, and I didn't get enough of it. But, so I was raised by my environment. But here's where it shifts. At some point, whether you were neglected in some way or whether you took on a more adult role as a child, be, you know, which is also a sign of neglect, right? Like if you have to take up for your parents because they are not actively parenting you, or if you have to protect your siblings or yourself, or if you just escape. Like for me, I got kicked out when I was 15. So I didn't really ever have a home feeling. And some of you may not have felt that freedom to just leave, that you maybe had to protect people within your family. And that's noble. And I respect that. But at some point, we're adults now and we wake up and we realize that we're not just a product of our environment anymore. We're actually responsible for creating our environment now. And that's where it gets real, because now we're accountable. And a lot of people don't want to deal with that. It's easier to stay in victim mode, blame everyone else, lick your wounds, sit in self-pity. Accountability is real scary. But that keeps you stuck. So you can either stay there, or you can say, now that I see it, I have to change how I show up. And I'm not saying that from some perfect place. I still battle this every day. As time goes on, it's less of a battle and it has become more of a habit to just reflect on how I own parts of situations. So yes, look at your parents. What did you inherit? What do you resent? What can you forgive? What still affects you? but don't stay there. No, don't wallow. Don't stay there. Don't spiral. This is the chance for you to take your power back. So let's talk about the second part. Now that the script has flipped, for those of us that are parents, parenting as a person who struggled as a child with their own parents, this part really matters because a lot of us are trying to break cycles. Some of us may not even know there's a cycle that we're continuing. A lot of us do know, and we may not have the tools or the strength to figure it out and try to break it. We need to break those cycles of addiction, those cycles of emotional neglect, the cycles of silence, the cycles of pretending everything is fine when it's not fine. And there's this pressure, especially if you're a parent in recovery, to be perfect. Well, what does that even mean? To make up for everything. What is everything? To never mess up again. What was messing up? And that pressure alone can break you because that pressure is coming from yourself. Because here's the truth. You don't suddenly become healed just because you stopped using. We go into some kind of an autopilot, like we know those things that we are supposed to do, and we try and do those things. We don't even really have a full grasp on who we are or what our purpose is. You know, a lot of us who are parents, we know our purpose is to raise good human beings, which is hard, but it's so rewarding, but it's so hard. You're still learning how to regulate your own emotions, how to communicate, how to sit in discomfort, how not to run. So you're learning this whilst also trying to teach these things to your kids, right? And now someone, your kids, are watching you do it. So I have a tween. I guess that's the phrase for a preteen, but not, yeah, a tween, which means I'm getting really close to the age with her where everything started for me. Everything went south for me. And that terrifies me because now I see it, the patterns, the reactions. And sometimes I hear myself say something and think, well, that sounded familiar. But here's where the cycle can actually break. Not because you're perfect, but because you're aware. Now, in situations, you pause, you apologize, you question yourself, you reflect, and then you try again. That's the difference. For me, I've learned my body tells me before I react. So one of my major signs is that my chest gets really hot, and that's my signal to stop, to not say the thing I'm about to say. I'm not perfect at it, not even close. And just because I've been sober for almost 8 years does not mean I've been healing for 8 years. I really started doing the work maybe 3 or 4 years ago. So I'm still learning. So if you're a parent listening to this, I need you to hear this, okay? You're not disqualified. You are not too late. And your past does not automatically become your child's future. Your child may not grow up in a perfect home, but now they can grow up in an honest one, a self-aware one where emotions are acknowledged, one where accountability exists, and one where healing is normal. And give your kids a little credit too. Like, depending on their age, they will likely understand if there's a reason, and if you make it make sense to them, they will appreciate that. So I'll be honest, in my experience, I've probably gone too far the other direction at times, like being too honest, maybe a little too early with my daughter. I've shared things with her that were maybe too heavy, and I question that. But this is the first time I've ever been her parent today. There's no blueprint. And for you not to be good enough, there has to be an example of what is good enough. And we weren't necessarily given that. So what we compare ourselves to, what is that? I think a lot of us are doing our best, but I think a lot of us will benefit from honesty and accountability. So awareness changes everything. This is what I do know. Awareness changes everything. Self-awareness, accountability, ownership. That is what breaks cycles. It's the denial that continues bad behavioral patterns. And if you're still struggling, ask yourself this: what kind of environment am I creating? Because whether you realize it or not, you are the orchestrator of your environment. You have that power. And when you're a parent, every day you're teaching something. So look back at your childhood. What were you missing? Write it down. And then start making choices every day to give that to your child now. Give your child what you wish you had now, no matter how uncomfortable it is, because I'm sure whatever it was that you were missing doesn't come natural. It's a learning process, and every day is going to be different, and it's going to be hard, but it's iterative. You have to adapt. But again, the first step is acknowledging what is what you can work on. So if it's an anger issue, if you yell, if you disengage, if you want to, isolate, and if those things you feel are hurting your kids, then once you become aware of those things and what your body is doing, then you know what's coming and you can try to redirect. That's what I do anyway. And it has helped. And honestly, it helps rewire you. So remember, it's progress, not perfection. If this episode resonated with you, I would love for you to keep coming back and listening. I'm going to keep sharing, learning, and figuring this out with you in real time. And wherever you are in your journey, you're not alone. There's more to come, and we're just getting into it. This is Addictive Personalities.